Hi everyone. So the work of a software engineer doesn't really end with a successful deployment to production. It usually begins after that. Why do I say so? Is because when you deploy your app to production, you need to observe how your app is behaving, whether there are failures, latency issues, how is the throughput and different performance metrics. Basically, in simple terms, you want to see that your app is behaving as expected. Like for example, there shouldn't be any NPE or null pointer exception in the runtime. How do you know that? Unless you monitor and observe how your app is behaving, you will not be able to understand if it is behaving correctly. So this is what led to the terms like observability or monitoring. And the most popular tools in the market include New Relic, Grafana, AWS CloudWatch, Splunk, ELK Stack, and so on. ELK Stack is what we will talk about today, this being the most popular one in log management. Splunk is also popular in many different use cases for log management. So this video is like an absolute must know for beginners because you will not just understand how this entire flow works behind the scene, will also do like a hands-on approach on how the logs which you are writing in the Spring Boot app is ultimately flowing to your Kibana dashboard. You'll also learn about MDC, which is mapped diagnostic context, which helps you to add like unique session ID or request ID to your request. So you'll be learning all of that. And most importantly, you will be able to see from scratch, right from downloading the executables to visualizing the logs on the Kibana dashboard. So I would recommend you guys to watch this video till the very end. So without further ado, let's begin.
Alright, so let's begin. As we can see, we have the starting point is our application, the Spring Boot app, which is going to generate the log. We are going to store that logs in some log file. We are going to use log4j2.xml to do the configuration of that. Now, after that, the log files needs to be processed by the Logstash. And after processing, let's say we apply some filtering and everything, that data, the filtered logs get stored into Elasticsearch, stored, indexed. Okay, so once it is indexed, from there, this UI, which is the Kibana dashboard, is going to pull in those logs from this place, from the indexes that we have in Elasticsearch, right? So this is the entire flow of whatever we have talked about. This is how it is going to work. So the first things first, so what are the steps that we need to do is first we have to download the ELK stack or the executables. So first we will download it and start the respective servers in the local. That is the first thing which we have to do, right? Then what will be step number 2? We also have to do some manual configuration in the YML files, which I'll show you for Elastic, Kibana, and Logstash conf file. Then third step, we have our Spring Boot app. In Spring Boot app, we will add some logs, the log4j2.xml, in which we will define a pattern. Now again, in my previous video in which I have talked about the masking of sensitive logs, in that I have talked at length about using log4j files with Spring Boot app. So what is this pattern tag and everything, I've talked about that. We'll define this pattern, and once this is done, then we will start our app, the Spring Boot app. So the expectation is the logs should flow into Logstash. We should be able to view the logs on the console. Then we will go to Elasticsearch, check if our index is created, whatever name we will give for that index. And finally, we have to go to our Kibana dashboard and check, or the right term is to discover the logs from that index. Whatever we have logged from our application, those logs should be coming in. One more quick addition which we will do to this is we will use MDC, like I have also discussed, that it is mapped diagnostic context, so that let's say I want to store some session ID, mobile number, user ID, etc. All of these, some details for every HTTP request. If I want to have those details also being logged so that I can trace it, then also for that reason we will be using MDC. So this is pretty much all the steps which we are going to do today.
So first we have to download the executables. So for the Elasticsearch, you just have to write Elasticsearch download. Open this, and over here you'll have the steps that you need to do. So you have to just choose the platform. For my case, it was a Windows. So I've downloaded that, and I've also extracted it. And then it is also giving you the steps to run it. So since I've already done this, it is there in my downloads. So let me go to the downloads. We have Elasticsearch. This is the folder. So like I said, we also have to do some changes in the configuration. So if you open the config, there is elasticsearch.yaml file. You have to open that YAML file and you have to do some changes like the XPack security features. If you initially when you will download, you'll see it is true. You have to mark it as false. Otherwise, it is not going to run in your local. So wherever you can see false, all of this initially will be true and you just have to mark it as false. Okay. So this is one change we have to do. And after that, going to the terminal, if you can see, I've already started the server before recording this because it takes like 15-20 minutes. So just wanted to save that. And I've started this. So here it is. Just have to get inside bean directory. Just have to go to your, so this is the path in which I have downloads and the folder. Go into the bean directory and start the batch file like this. Anyway, you are being given the command over here. So that is going to start your Elasticsearch server. How are you going to understand that it has started? You should be able to see something like Varsha started like this. Okay, now on which port is this accessible? If you have to search, you will be able to search this if the server has started or not. That is going to be 9200. Okay, so I think somewhere over here, probably on the YAML file, if you search for host, if you see the HTTP port is 9200. So all you need to do is you have to go to localhost 9200 and you see the cluster name is Elasticsearch and the tagline. So this, if you are getting, it means your Elasticsearch server is up. Similarly, you just have to go to Kibana and download the same steps, right? You have to do this. All of this is same. This is going to be accessible at 5601. So now inside Kibana, same thing, you just have to open the YAML file. Over here, you just have to verify this if the Elasticsearch host is pointing to 9200. So now you understand that Kibana is connecting to Elasticsearch because it needs access to the index in which my logs exist. So this much is clear. Okay. After this, two servers are up. Okay. So if I show you the command for Kibana, again, Kibana takes easily like 20 minutes on my system to start. So, and there are a lot of logs. So I'm just going to show you guys. So if you notice, 815.3, this is the path, and I've just started the batch file over here. There's a lot of different logs. How do you know if it is already up? You should be seeing a logger like, just let me show it to you guys. Kibana is now available. If you are seeing this status, it means Kibana is accessible. So just have to go to localhost 5601. Okay. So I'll just open this much /app. Just open this. So you can see loading Elastic. So your Kibana dashboard is going to open now. So this is, if you get this, it means your Kibana server has also started. So we already started Elasticsearch server. We started the Kibana server. But before doing the Logstash server changes, let me first go to the Spring Boot application and show you the code changes for that. Because after that, it will be easier for us to do the config changes in the Logstash. So into our IDE, first I'm going to show you the pom.xml. So we have the normal starter dependencies and everything. Commented out, we have added the log4j's dependency over here, and rest everything is very same. And rest everything is same. So pretty much this is our pom.xml. Now going to our controller. So this is a simple controller. I'll come to the MDC. You can just ignore it for a while. It's very basic controller in which what I'm trying to do is very basic controller it is. I don't have to say much about this. The next thing I want to show you is the log4j's XML file. So how would you start So how would you actually start this application is, see, you have to go to start.spring.io. People who have worked on side projects of Spring or with Spring in general know about this. This is the starter point in which you just select your version, give your metadata and everything, and you can generate. Before that, of course, you can add your dependencies. For example, you can add Lombok, you can add your web dependencies. Okay. And maybe Kafka and everything. So this is what you should be doing to bring up this. So that is why this application is very simple. A small application it is. Now very important, focus on this part, the log4j2.xml. Try to understand this. I'm reiterating this. I have already discussed. There are two parts to this. We have a console and we have a file. You can see there are two tags. Console, which means the logs on your standard output, what you're seeing. And file appender is basically going to help you in creating the file to which our Logstash server is going to point to. So in the console, we have defined a pattern, and also in the file, we have defined a pattern. Notice line number 14, in which I have defined this is going to be my file, in which whatever logs I'm generating should be in this folder. So for this, I already have logs in this folder. So let me just give a new name so that I can show you the demo that a new folder is getting generated. And this is the name of the file, and this is the pattern. So first you will see the timestamp, and then you will be able to see the thread, the log level, and the rest of the message. So after this appender section is done, you'll be able to see now we are just defining that in case of our application logger and in the root logger, we are just saying that, okay, for this application, just append the file and the console which we have defined, and also for the root logger, just add these. So this is how pretty much our log4j2.xml file looks like. Now I'm going to start this application. But before that, I want to talk about MDC. So MDC is nothing but your, you can think of it like a hash map. It is basically thread local storage. So over there, mapped diagnostic content, which means anything that you would need for diagnosis or troubleshooting, any those reference numbers, correlation ID, session ID, all of those, how do you want those to be coming into your logs without you having to log it every time? Because suppose if there is a request, that request ID is going to be unique for every request. The user ID is going to be unique for that request. So for that, what we have done is we have added a filter. It is going to intercept at the HTTP request level, and from the header it is going to capture the user ID, generate the request ID, and put this into my MDC object, so that when I am going into my controller or maybe into my service class, over there I can just get from the MDC. It's like a container. So I can just get from the MDC whatever values I need, and I'm going to adjust it in my logs or maybe return it, whatever it is. Very simple, right? So this is how we are also going to see how we are going to make use of MDC. But before that, we will just have a plain simple pattern. Over here, we will try to accommodate the user ID and request ID. Don't worry about that. So let me just comment out this part of getting the MDC. We just want to see plain and simple how this works, right? So this is what the code changes are. Now we have to start our Logstash server also, and we'll see how the logs start flowing. First, we will see how to download Logstash. Same thing, just have to come here, click on download Logstash. We'll see something like this. Now over here, the most important thing is you have to prepare the logstash.conf file and run this command ultimately to to run the server. So if you see in my terminal, this is the server which is already running, and I have used this command to run it after I have extracted from the zip file. And one more thing is this conf file. So preparing this conf file is important. So this is the sample logstash conf file. Now here the first is going to be the path. What is the path? The path is basically the place from where it is going to read your log file. Remember, we had given logs demo, and this is my log folder inside which the log should be generated. Then in the standard output, that is when you're starting the server, you would want to see if the logs are coming, connecting to Elasticsearch using 9200. And finally, this is the index. On Elasticsearch, the Logstash server is going to ultimately push the logs, right? So on Elasticsearch, on which index I want those logs to be there. That is why I've specified the name of the index. If you do not specify the name of the index, it will take some default name. So we'll see how to check whether the indexes got created or not. So we'll see that. So once you do this file changes, the conf file changes, and you start the server, you should also be able to see whether it has started or not. So where is Logstash running? On which port is Logstash running? So if you see, the Logstash is saying successfully started Logstash API on port 9600. So over here, I'm going to say localhost 9600. And you would be able to see that status is green. This is the pipeline. And so if you get this, it means your Logstash server has started successfully. Okay, so now we have already started our server and we have seen the changes that we made in the conf file. Now the goal is we will start our Spring Boot app. The log should get generated and we should be able to see that on our Logstash server. So let me start this application. So it has already started and we should be able to see our log messages as per the pattern that we have defined over here, the timestamp, the thread, the logger info, the message and everything. Now I'm going to go to my Postman and hit this endpoint. I get this. If I go to my ID, I am also seeing this is starting my greeting method. Now the same logs I should be able to see in this logs demo. So if I go to app.log, see the logs are generated in the app.log. Now if I go to Logstash servers standard output, you see, these are the logs which got generated. This is the standard output of the Logstash server in which I'm seeing the logs. Now, the next question is, how will I be able to see my index? So for that, remember the logs. Remember, Elasticsearch is running on localhost 9200. So if I go to 9200, I'm just going to do /cat. Over here, we have indices. So I'm going to just add indices to this. So this is our index that has been created as we did cat indices. Now into our Kibana. Here, this is where I'm seeing the logs. How did I come to this page? Once you launch your Kibana, you just have to write index management. Click on the index, click on discover index, and you'll be able to come to this page. And over here, you can see this plus button. Here, you just have to add whatever fields that you need, which is relevant for you. Now, these fields, whatever you're seeing, are like the very basic bare minimum things. In actual scenarios, there can be more fields which you need to add as columns. And like next video, we will in the next part, we will just come wrap up with the MDC. So you can also add unique request ID, session ID, all of those information, and you should be able to visualize those information also over here. So now let's move to the last segment of this video of adding MDC to our log messages and thus see those on Kibana dashboard. So back to our ID. Now, as we have seen in the MDC filter that we have added the request ID and the user ID. Now the sole purpose of showing you this MDC thing is we want to see that these two IDs that we are adding in the request, these two we should also be able to see it on Kibana logs. And to do that, we also have to define a Grok pattern. So all of that we want to discuss as part of the last segment of this. So in the MDC filter, we have already seen the changes that we have made. In the test controller, this was the line which is uncommented. Apart from these two things, also, what we have to do is in the log4j2.xml, the pattern which was earlier like this, now we have added these two components. What are these? In this, we are basically saying that user ID, for user ID, it's like you can think like a key value equal to just get me, just parse the value which you are getting it from the MDC. So this is how it is going to parse it. And the rest everything is same. So this is the pattern which we have defined. Now I'm going to run this. So what is the expectation that the user ID and the request ID should get populated when I'm doing the HTTP hit from my controller. So let's see that. So earlier it is empty. And once my controller and I hit this, I am going to see that the user ID and the request ID, which was the UUID, has been populated. Now, my next goal is whatever I'm seeing in this log, this I should be able to see it on Kibana. So I also have to now, in order to see this message on the Kibana dashboard, I also need to parse this user ID and the request ID separately. So I'm going to show you how to write the Grok pattern, how to debug the Grok pattern also. So if I go to my Logstash sample, this is the part which you have to add. You have to add the filter, then Grok, and match, and inside this the pattern. This is actually the pattern. So how you should be able to build this pattern and how you'll be able to verify if the pattern is correct, for that what you need to do is you have to go to Kibana. Then over here you need to go to Grok debugger. Here you need to give the sample data and the Grok pattern. So what is our sample data? Our log. So I'll copy this. Okay. So this is my sample log. And in the Grok pattern, I'm going to copy not everything, but let me show you step by step. So let's say I just copy this much, only the timestamp part. And I want to see if that is being parsed. So I'll click on simulate. You see in the JSON, I can see the timestamp, whatever was passed, it is able to parse it. So be mindful of the space and everything. So over here, I'll go and I'll just copy this, the log level. I go over here and I just give one space and then this simulate, I should be able to see the log level. Okay, you can also maybe define it like log underscore level. Then the next is the user data. So this is inside a square braces. So that is why we have just given the backslash. And also be mindful of the space. Here we see that after info there is a like double space. Can you see there's a double space? So I have to give 1, 2 space. Otherwise it will not be able to parse it. So here basically I'm saying user ID equal to whatever the data is there. Just capture that and put it into user ID. So if I click on simulate, I'm seeing my user ID is also getting parsed. The same thing, I'm going to do it for my request ID. So I'll just say request ID and I'll copy this and I'll put it. Simulate. I get the request ID also. So basically this is how you should be able to build the Grok pattern. So this is what we have done over here. So our Grok pattern is done, and that is the reason why if you click on the Logstash and just scroll up a bit, you see over here, look at this message. The message is there, the log message is there. The request ID and the user ID are separately populated. So now let us see how can we add these fields on our Kibana dashboard and visualize the final results. So this is my Kibana dashboard and I'm seeing the request ID and the user ID both over here. So on the left hand side, earlier we were not seeing these fields, but because of us adding the Grok pattern, we are able to see this. Another thing just want to wrap up by saying is you can create a data view on top of this. Earlier we were seeing the index and then we were clicking on discover index. Here you can create a data view on top of your index. You just have to write the pattern, whatever it is, and the matching sources are going to come. I've already created this data view, so I cannot create another one. So basically, to sum up, when you add the Grok pattern for whatever fields that you need, those are going to come over here and you'll be able to visualize the same on Kibana dashboard. So with that, I'm wrapping today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have got some value out of it. Thank you again. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I request you to subscribe to the channel and spread this video among your peers as well. Thank you so much for watching.